So the Stella shot. Do you know anybody who's tried it?
Not personally, but I was talking a few times with I was chatting and talking in the phone a few times with the people that brought it to Israel, Stella Israel. The Stella is operating on, if I remember correctly, for about 15 years already in the USA. And they started to even bring this treatment into active duty in a way. So it's something that is, this kind of treatment was designed not only for PTSD, but they're doing it for PTSD for the last 15 years. And they brought it to Israel now. It's 2 shots in the neck to the ganglion, whatever. I don't remember how to say it in English.
Ganglion. Ganglion. It's Ganglion.
Yeah.
Ganglion.
And it's supposed to help release much of the stress in the system, and with the psychotherapy and your own responsibility to take care of yourself, it's supposed to help you make the habits and relax yourself. So when the impact is reducing, you will be in a different situation already. And they have good numbers for people that it was helpful for them. And in Israel, the numbers are a little bit lower than in the US, but it's okay. We need more people to try it, so we'll know more. But it's considered as a safe treatment. They haven't found any reports of bad influence except of some few side effects that are temporarily, like red eye or whatever, because it's still
a stoner.
yeah, we'll have a droppy eye for a little bit or whatever,
a few hours. Eye? Yeah, like that, like
because you
like you had a stroke or some shit.
Not as in a way, but because you make the muscles go to sleep, so it can a little bit impact until the body.
So it looks like you got.
It's really accurate. It's really accurate where they put the needle.
Man, I got to tell you, I'm looking at their website right now. Well, first of all, like for me, I have heard of this. I didn't look into it. When it first came out, I remember hearing about it, and I think then the same reaction that I have now reading into it and hearing what you just said. For me, a needle in the neck is the last resort.
No.
But
this is why 3 years ago when I heard about it and was invited to do it, not in Israel, I was away. But now when I have more information, when I know and learn to know a little bit, few of the people that are leading this in Israel, so I'm more certain that it can't do much damage. Maybe it won't help to 15-20% of the people that will try it as much as they hope, or it won't help at all. But for the other 70-80%, maybe more, it could bring enough relax for a long period of time so you can focus on your daily activities and habits.
But again, like I have to come back and push back, like, so the fact that, well, at least here in the States, And even with that being said, man, you have different things in different states and different cities and different neighborhoods. So it really doesn't mean anything in the states. For me and my what I feel like I have observed, there is a lot of attention that's paid to what happens afterwards, treatment afterwards. And this treatment that presents itself afterwards usually comes with a patent, some type of profitable pitch, and a corporation that then gets developed into this real giant on the hill with respect to their outsized voice telling our leaders what's important to be looking at into research, what's not important to be looking at with respect to research, where academia should go with respect to their research grants and their own institutional review board process and whatever, like what they can look at and consider, what they can't, what's taboo, right? And what's just absolutely off the table with respect to even being able to investigate. And now you could probably feel like I'm talking about cannabis again. And that goes back to my experience, right? Back at the
That's my
University
second
of Arizona,
topic. So yeah,
back at the University of Arizona, being told by administrators there and others there was nothing off the table, and then being scoffed at with the cannabis issue, not just my experience, but proposing along with others that we should probably look into it. But then having simultaneously stuff like this sold to us in meetings and conferences and various panels and discussions, how these drugs are the next big thing. And everybody's got to pay attention to this, and everybody's got to, know about this, and then you got to invest in this, and then you got to support this all the way. And don't you know, you have to tell your elected officials to support this too. Seen it happen, experienced it. It's weird, right? Especially when I'm looking at their website and I see that you can inject ketamine right into your neck. Growing up, I remember hearing about K-holes and people at raves that just got stuck. And it was talked about as a warning, not like a cool thing. But now, right, doctors and psychologists and other psychiatrists, whoever, researchers, that's exactly what they want to do. They want to take veterans and others into these ketamine clinics and whatnot, send them on these K-hole trips, bring them back in a controlled setting, yeah, send them on their way like they fixed them. I feel like that's dangerous, right? I also don't feel like that's necessarily a bad idea. But I do feel like the way we've been discussing it, all the options, and how it's getting more kind of flavor of the day now, and everybody wants to come up and it's like that guy on fucking, hey, you ever seen a $20 bill? You ever seen a $20 bill on weed? That's how it feels from that movie. If you don't get the reference, it's from an American movie that was popular over here, stoner movie, right? Um,
which
John
movie?
John Stewart is the character, that particular character. I'm stoned now, so the name of the movie, what is it? Kowalski, you killed Killer B. It's Dave Chappelle's in it. That other dude who
Yeah,
always looks stoned.
I'm trying to remember.
Oh man,
I, I, try, I
I'm
try and
old stoner.
steer clear of stoner comedy movies because of the stigma that is still embedded in the whole delirium of how it's presented. So I stay clear of like the stoner comedy type of movies.
What's
So it's probably one I might not have even.
What do you feel like is the word? that lends itself towards what it is that I mean, your organization, though, I think you should maybe, as an individual, like hearing this, like, oh man, well, that seems a little bit uptight. But I think people, like, you should explain that you have an organization where that's actually your focus is to end the stigma. And then when you explain that, I think it might help people understand why those types of films or scenes or scenarios aren't helpful to what it is that you're trying to do with your nonprofit. You know what I mean? If you want.
Right. Well, through the nonprofit, the whole reason the nonprofit exists, why Veterans Ending the Stigma exists, is to break down these communication barriers and the stigma label component that has been placed on a cannabis user, and to show that these barriers are man-made existed as far as what is perceived to be the individual utilizing the substance compared to what they are capable of in the end. And so for me, like, the worst one, in my opinion, is one of the newer ones, Disjointed. And it tied into the entire like stoner counterculture. So Disjointed, if you haven't seen it, it is based out of California, and it's based around a dispensary owner. And the dispensary owner goes in and she's hiring all of these different people. She hires a disabled vet even to be security. And it goes into showing, like, there's one scene in there where the veteran decides to use cannabis for the first time, and the like a trip that he goes through with how the drug interacts with him and whatnot, and how it's portrayed in the TV it was awful to me, as far as like it's sticking with the stoner culture and not sticking with the fact that these are just people working a job that might be suffering from some condition that this substance is helping. And so keeping this whole stoner culture alive, I think, is part of the perpetualness of the fact that this is still an issue, that we still keep getting pushed aside, and how drugs like ketamine and MDMA have been able to kind of jump over the whole cannabis movement, is because you don't see movies out there where someone's on ketamine acting a fool or being stupid. You don't see someone out on MDMA. You know, ecstasy not really in movies much anymore, but yet we still have this whole movie counterculture around the stoner culture of things. And to me, it's hurting us, I think, more than it's really helping us.
So,
and then to touch on this whole Stella shit. So, like, one of the issues that I know of to be an issue is what they call the ganglion cyst that a lot of veterans are experiencing back here in the back of their neck most of the time. So if you feel the back of your neck, if you're a veteran, you'll probably feel that the right side feels a little more raised than the left side does. And so what they're talking about is this whole ganglion spot back here that helps release this memory flight or flight mechanism. And so a lot of us that have suffered severe repetitive trauma, this swells and it creates almost like a cyst issue in the back of your neck. And so what this stuff seems to be talking about is putting injections right there near that spot to help break it up and relieve that tension. And if it's able to relieve that tension, then it might potentially relieve, that inflammation that's there, should help relieve some of that fight or flight mechanism that's created from that, is what I'm getting from it. But like you, Rico, I agree. I mean, sticking 2 needles in my neck's probably the last resort I want to go through to try and do that.
Exactly what I told them also when I talked with them. And also what we were discussing is that they really want to bring this treatment to veterans because they see it works and they know people afraid of it, the people who knows about it, and they know that most of people doesn't know about it. one more thing that I was really impressed of, that the condition for them, for you to be able to have this treatment, is that you will be already on therapy, like with an expert that will help you before and after, that you won't like lose what you can benefit from the relief that can be really substantial or really small. It's okay, but even tiny things can help us. Less pain, less sweat, less pressure in the system. Always helpful. And they got a big donation to bring it for free for veterans. And just to put it in the field, like they said. And the person that leads it in Israel is a veteran himself, and he used to be in my kibbutz even. So it's a nice loop. He learned, he was a lone soldier, and he learned Hebrew in the Ulpan in way back. And he's talking our language in a way that it cannot stand alone. He insists on it. It cannot stand alone. It's
That's
not
what
a magic pill. It doesn't work for everybody. We should think together. Do you really want to try it? We need to approve you. They work with one of the main characters, professors in Israel, at the field of post-trauma. So I think they responsible enough for me, and I had the same reaction as you have, exactly, and I have it for 3 years until we were discussing it a few times not long ago. So it even made me think maybe I should try it. And even if I will decide I want to try it, they still need to say from their side, it's safe enough. They need to screen me. They need to check me, my physical condition, and to make sure.
If you're thinking about it, if it's something that you've been looking into, and I mean 3 years, that's not just jumping into something. And if you know somebody that does it and they're reputable, and through this process get a little fuzzy, right? I want to see what happens. It doesn't sound like
what I wanted to say. I will make sure to document it for you.
Yeah. And then afterwards, like I want to kind of stick a microphone in your face, and no, after that, I don't want to see you like that. I don't want to see you like that. No, keep those pictures. No, don't take pictures of that. Just let me smiling face. Right here, I am. Yay. Because if I see you like that, no, that's gonna. I don't even care what you have to say. Like that could have been the best thing, but if you show up to the meeting like this, man, fuck that. Like, so let's just give it let's pause, give it a day or two, let that work itself back in.
Right. Let the swelling in the neck go down a little bit. Those shots first.
Yeah, they said you need to wait a few hours.
Oh yeah. And
yeah.
Do not go AMA. That's important what you said. Though it's not just with this procedure. And I'm of the opinion, truly, we're facing something not just in the veteran community, we're a microcosm of the community itself. And nation to nation, that includes our global population as well. What we see in one country, right, when we see what happens when people become extremely wealthy, and we see the issues and the stuff that they talk about and that they go through, and people who aren't so fortunate and who are still suffering to bring their standard of living up, right? We see what it is that they struggle with on a day-to-day basis and what it is that they focus on as well. But we also see a lot of resilience, a lot of hope, a lot of faith, a lot of hard work, ethic that can hardly be beat once they find their way up to, right, where they want to be or need to be, yeah, they usually outperform the people who have been out here and become complacent. And not all the people up here are complacent, but a lot of them are. What's there to look after once you have everything that you really need, right? You start to get bored, then you become kind of like picky about what other people have and what they seem to be feeling and whether or not they're happy. And then it's like, well, why can't I? And then you start looking down because that's one of the easiest thing to do. Like they're making your life difficult now, so you can focus on them, right? But when it comes to talking then about these types of solutions, it's difficult to break through those barriers. And I think having all the options from all the different experiences and all the different conversations about what's going on, the people down here don't have the money, the time, or the resources or the energy to be fucking around with the research projects and the grant initiatives and all this other fucking time-consuming shit that the people up here with resources and who are not really worried about whatever. If it takes 5 years, dope. That's what they get to put on their CV. I was involved with this prolonged project, and this is what it is that we were doing, and blah, blah, blah. Ron to slap me on my back. The people down on the ground are looking for the most impactful, straight away, give me the juice, straight up, I need it now so that I can function, get back to work, take care of my family, take care of myself. So the farmers smoking pot in the field makes total sense. You're doing a repetitive job in difficult situations, battling the environment, battling the timeline of your boss and all this other stuff, yeah? Probably got a lot of things going on in your head, a lot of emotions. You're feeling some kind of way about this stupid bullshit that you got to do day in, day out. Smoking a fucking joint at the beginning of your shift, during your break, during lunch, during the other break, and after work kind of makes sense to keep you in the game. You know what I mean? Same with people who used to use and harvest the poppies and the stuff that they then turn into heroin. You know what I mean? The resin and all that. You look at the United States Department of Agriculture, it has a whole section on medicinal herbs, the benefits of plants, right? But then for whatever reason, it gets lost in translation when we're talking about addressing real life issues such as trauma, right? Occupational stress, Kowalski, right? As opposed to post-traumatic stress, which focuses on a single incident where it's usually some type of overpaid doctor or really nitpicky researcher who wants to know, what was it that made you feel bad though? I need you to specify the exact situation, the exact moment, right? From fucking beginning to end, and just that one moment, and let that be, to me, your explanation on why you have this really complex situation that you're dealing with, right? And that acronym doesn't do shit. It doesn't drill down in any of the symptoms. It doesn't talk about how we're feeling. It doesn't talk about our emotional state or fucking why we're anxious, why we're feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. If you're in a situation,
put into context the beginning. What were you like before you entered that situation? That's huge context when talking about this situation.
It could be, or it could be just a further identification of long-standing issues that were never addressed, or that were being suppressed, or even worse than suppressed, compartmentalized. Because the suppression, right, much like the compartmentalization, tends to come back up when you're suppressing things or whatever. Like you feel it, you know it, it's there. When you like
building on each other.
When you straight up put that in a different block of your head, like you do downrange, like I did downrange, I can't process this right now. There's a dude chopped in half over there. I can't process this right now. There's a whole village that's on fire. I can't process this right now. Everything's on fire. right? Let me just put what I see in the back of my head and here and go right back into training mode and
Because
do
I need to
what it is.
operate.
Yeah, what's repetitive? What's muscle memory? What do I know that I have to do in order to stay alive? And it usually happens without thought at that point. But if you're exposed to those type of situations day in, day out, we're not talking about a single instance. And to come at this issue like that's what it is pretty fucking disrespectful, in my opinion, right? And especially when you're talking about labeling us with some disorder when all we did was go out as soldiers, as troops, and do what we were ordered to do.
You know, the
To
national cons the national council for PTSD in Israel. It's a committee they made with a few of the best figures in the field. It's one of the things I went to the Knesset to represent. Said, you have to define this thing not as a disorder, not as a mental illness, not as a head injury, as an injury for itself. It's a unique kind of injury. And occupational stress should be part of it, but it's not all of it. And the fighting events or traumatic events is part of it, but the entire system we were part of is the main issue. Because it's the training, it's the mentality, it's the rules, it's the dissonance between ethics and moral and what you do in real combat. It's the horrific truth that war should be outside of civil society and modern wars are in civil society instead of the battlefield, which is double the damage or triple it. I don't know how to say it even. The horrors of bringing military and armies to fight in civil society, the prices are too high for any army or any society to pay. Not the strong and not the weak.
I would like to push back on you a little bit on that. Right. Number one, that I think war as it is, right? We should be asking ourselves, spending money, giving awards to people who are asking the questions on how do we avoid that? How do we stop that? Because in reality, we're all in the same spot, just with different languages, different scenery, and different economic opportunities around us. And so how do we stop war? Fuck, right? Because that's damaging, no matter if it's outside of town or in town. And I would argue that having it done solely out of town and away from the people that you're trying to protect is even worse. It's even worse because they don't have any attachment to it. They don't have any understanding of it. They don't know what's being sacrificed. And they can't appreciate how then they need to act accordingly to hopefully prevent that from occurring in the first place. And they just become drunk on their own ego and arrogantly go out and start thumping motherfuckers on the nose that they don't agree with for whatever reason, because they know they don't have to put up shit. It's not going to be them that's fighting. They just get to go talk shit at the United Nations. They just get to go to the White House and talk shit. They just get to go to the Congress and talk shit, the Knesset, and talk shit and put on a show for the people. They don't give a fuck. Most of those people, those politicians and the business people and the lobbyists, never have to see a fucking battlefield. It's us, the jackasses who sign up for it, believing we're doing our patriotic duty. And so when you have our neighbors and our families and our relatives and our friends and everybody the fuck else thinking that we're some type of heroes, and we're outside of the city limits and nobody even really gets to fucking see or feel what it is that we're doing, And then when we come back to try to relay that, oh, isn't that okay? Oh, this poor traumatized soul. And we're over here like, hey, you guys should probably pay the fuck attention to what's going on because you're making it worse. You think you're making it better. You think you're strong. You think you're cool. You think you're powerful, but you're not. You're fucking retarded. And you're bringing us all into a really bad situation that you're not fucking prepared for. So I don't know what it is to do when I'm like, thank you for your service. I'm like, fuck you, dude. I'm pretty sure that I just killed us all from my fucking service and what it is that we fucking started and what it is that I saw, right, during the Mahdi uprising and the fucking Al-Qaeda in Iraq development in 2004 and 2005 in Baghdad and the Sunni Triangle. If that, right, like it is going to spread and then come home to us, y'all motherfuckers should probably stop thanking me for my service and get your ass to the firing range and start to learn how to fucking become, right, self-sufficient and reliable because, wow, holy shit, we've been asleep at the wheel for like 20 fucking years, if not longer, yeah? And these people in power have been doing some shady shit under the guise of freedom and whatever else, man. So I feel some kind of way about it being done solely outside of the purview and the view and the fucking right arms of the community. I'm gonna shut up now because I got pot.
No, I really agree with a lot of what you said. I will try to frame what I meant a little bit better. The fact that today armies fight consistently inside cities. It's not to conquer a city, it's to control a city and keep fighting on it daily, on daily life. Civil society cannot exist. And maybe in past wars it was a little bit different, more brutal maybe, but a little bit different. Today we accept as civil society, as governments, as people, we accept the fact that there is wars like Ukraine, like Israel for 75 years that constantly are in a fight. We don't need to send our soldiers away from the ocean, and we feel the costs, you said, maybe a little bit stronger than in the US and faster. This is why I can really relate with what you're saying. If we look on Israeli society, how it's turned to parts in those days, it's related to military regime on the out of 67 borders. That is debatable for the international community if it's Israel or Palestine or whatever entity it is. And you have inside 67 borders for Israel, which is acceptable in the international community, but unacceptable for the local residents that are non-Jewish or non-supporters of the Israeli state. And this is big populations inside that doesn't accept the situation. And we are constantly in a fight inside ourselves, and the people that are was the few of the leaders of this war machine and technology machine and business machine in Israel now saying, no, what's going on in our government and the values that are being pushed forward, it's not the values that we will fought for or agreed to pay the prices that we are paying daily for fighting in the past or still fighting, because people serve in reserve, they finish the age of reserve, but they keep volunteer for years because it's important in their eyes. Even they've been exposed to the prices of war, to the costs of war, for civil society, for their own humanity. And now they're saying, no, if we're not going to at least try to have the frame of human values, of justice, of life being valued even if it's not from our nation or religion or people, we're not going to keep paying the prices of war, of being a soldier, because once you've been a soldier, probably most of your life you'll be a soldier in a way. To be able to transform yourself from a soldier back to a full civilian, something very few people can do. Very few. And it's because of society and stigma, and it's because of our biology and the way armies train us and the way countries raise us and which messages they put into our mind. And yes, if we want to stop this war thing all over, this is the trajectory we need to take. Communication, so-called education as resources for making wise choices, hopefully, that will bring thrivability, not only for ourselves as a unit, but to the cooperation we have with the world outside, being part of something, of life. Then we can raise people that value life and will do anything in their power to avoid war in all of its forms, on people's minds, on people's hearts, and their body and property.
So I'm interested based off of what you were just talking about, and it kind of goes off topic, but I'll bring it back on topic. You know, I'll bring it back full circle. But how does Israel look at autism within your society? How is that looked at? How is that viewed? And do you know roughly like what the population numbers are like now coming about with autism?
As any Western society that have all of the how you say waste, like industrial waste and chemicals and pollutants, and the air we breathe and the water we drink and the food we eat, we have high rates of people on the autistic. It's like a rainbow, you know, and there's all kinds of in my personal opinion, there isn't one person that is neuronormative, so we should stop labeling even as autistics. And people in Israel, even people that hold power like in government, still use autistic as a bad word. Like those, they're just fucking autistics or something like that. Even it was about the protest that those so-called autistics is probably few of the smartest and more talented people in Israel. And the Israeli society slowly, thankfully for really brave people that are doing amazing things in the last decade, and especially in the last 5 years in that field, there is a whole movement to bring autism to normalize it into society. No more special schools, just in class, just give them a little bit more attention and teach the people around them how to communicate with them. And even to discover that probably most of them are so much more talented than most of us in few things. We just need to find what they're really good at and they like to do. And there will be magicians for modern society. The army learn it, so they recruit them to very specific units and assignments, and for regular service. Not as combats, but in other formats and parts of the army that support combat in a way, even intelligence, things that I know and are well known, and they are not a secret, that they are really, really good in helping the computer to be smarter and to better resolve intelligence from pictures, from visible resources. So this is one way.
Right.
And also there's a big movement that called the Hakotism, that a man called, his name is Rimon Tubin, is an entrepreneur, how you say it? He's like making new initiatives and businesses. So his son is autistic, and because of his difficulties, he started reaching all of the Israeli society and businesses and technology companies, and they gather in once a year to make like new breakthroughs, new technologies, new paradigms of communication, or to make better life for the people and all of the other society, to better understand and communicate, to make them be independent as possible, and to normalize their uniqueness. They're unique, they're special, they're not less or more than us, they're just different. And maybe few of their differences are even better than functions we have. I don't know. And I believe so.
So the
So
reason I
this is
asked,
about autism in Israel. It's as much as the more nationalist narrative getting stronger, and the religious narrative getting stronger, so they have less resources, less they will be less accepted in society as all minorities, as the LGBTQ, and as all kind of disabled people and females. We already getting reports all around Israel about bus drivers that saying to young females with short pants, you're undressed, you cannot go up to the bus, or preventing a female lady to, like a woman, to go up to the train because it's only men. They decided that this train part is only for men, so they didn't let her in. So it's live, it's already happening here, and it's, again, like you already said, Robert, it's communication and stigma. And I really, really think that you really pinpointed one of the main challenges for veterans and for any minority.
well, the reason I asked you that question, right, is I personally have been on this endeavor to understand PTSD. And I went through and started this endeavor, obviously, when I was diagnosed with it, and really wanted to learn the research behind it and pretty much become my own expert in what I felt was my condition. And I was told by a VA doctor, flat out, early on in my career treatment, that nobody in the VA really understood PTSD, and I needed to start guiding my own treatment process of what I needed help with. And so that was kind of like a kick in the ass for me to go out and learn, right? To just learn as much as I could, to be a driving force in getting the doctor to treat me the way I felt I needed to be treated based off of what I've learned. And it led me to understanding various, specifically like the GPR55 receptor in the brain. It is a receptor in the brain that helps with serotonin production, and it is one of the main receptors in the brain that's responsible for the push out of it and the regulatory push out of that. And then I learned how that was in tune with a specific enzyme in the liver. And so now you have the liver and then you have the head connected through the same mechanism that I was being told is the mechanism process for what causes PTSD. And it's this whole regulatory serotonin release process, right? To allow yourself that debriefing process in the brain after a traumatic event to allow yourself to start new again. It's part of that healing process. Well, when you receive a lot of trauma, prolonged trauma experiences, this GPR55 receptor stops responding the way it's supposed to, stops pushing out the serotonin the way it's supposed to, thereby your brain then holds on to these memories, right? Which creates this constant battle. Well, I started looking into it and started finding out that autism was telling me pretty much the same thing. When you start looking into autism, you start finding out that it's roughly the same mechanism that causes the external environmental responses that an individual is known for having when being on this autism spectrum. So that told me right off the bat then that, like you addressed in the very beginning, these environmental factors have created a situation to where our internal coding, our internal responses then has become sporadic, has become to where it's very easy to become overwhelmed by the neurological response. And then looking into it and understanding that way then almost tells me to the point to where us as veterans, us with prolonged war trauma, have essentially been placed on that spectrum. We have been placed to a point to where these environmental response factors now have been hindered based off of the prolonged trauma response that we have experienced. And go ahead.
It's even more because what you're saying about the brain and the digestion system is even more, because if you look on not only on this level of connection, if you look on the entire blood flow in the entire brain, if you look on places that you can find a real wound, like infection in the brain, you can find scar tissues in the brain, you can find places that are shut down in the brain. It's not only the serotonin, it's like you said, we talked about the ganglion, it's the hypothalamus, it's so many parts in our brain that changing the way they function for a long time. And when you do it with young people, like we said, that their brain haven't fully developed, and when you know the connection between nutrition and the brain and how you feel and how you think and what you say, and when they raise us to war and to glorify the heroes that are dead or the best killers, and when most of the people are living in cities with no connection to the soil, to healthy bacteria and organisms that regulate our stomach, and the food they supply our troops to us is industrial food with the environmental, all the accumulating environmental, disease and chemicals and FPFS and all of that. When you put it all together, that's fucking irresponsible towards life, not only towards humanity, not only towards the US or Israel, for the entire spaceship we're all living in. That's war on life by
really
the
cool.
bodies that say they want to protect life or humanity or civil society or profit or whatever. There will be no profit if there is no life.
And it's really cool you said that, right? Because like this ties then back to your whole war and civil society and how they can't exist, right? So I've been fortunate enough through my gardening and the people I've been able to interact with that one of the early individuals that I learned a lot from in gardening was through a local gardening club that I joined here. And it was a gentleman in his 90s, still growing flowers. And one of the things that really stood out to me in our conversations was how his food, he noticed throughout the years how his food started tasting different. And I was like, well, that's, that's an interesting component. I get that. I've heard that before, but why do you think that is? And he told me it was actually the industrial complex that screwed it up. When you go from thinking that most of our food back in the day was cooked by fire. Well, with fire comes ash. Ash comes nutrients. Nutrients comes better plants, more fruitful plants, more flavorful plants. And once we started getting rid of burning these things, and started using gas, all of a sudden we stopped pumping all of this extra nitrogen back into the earth. That then started changing. Plus, when you start thinking about what it started pushing into the air and then what our food started sucking up from all of those gases, also then started changing the way and expressions of certain things and whatnot. So it's all kind of tied together.
Yes, and I will even add a little bit because it's also the agricultural practices. Because when you overwater, you wash all the minerals. When you put artificial quantities of all kind of whatever the plants need, if it's phosphate, if it's nitrogen, whatever, when you don't let nature do its own balance as it knows, when you raise the same plant miles and miles, acres and acres, when you don't have the diversity nature needs, when you don't let the animals do their own circularity in the field as the new, it's new, pharmaculture is new, but the renew, the agriculture practices that we are now looking at them as, wow, we invented the wheel. No, we are just going back to listen to nature. So you can suddenly see that in the fields that you do modern agriculture, so the tomatoes have 25% of the nutrition it used to have 50 years ago. 25%, you need to eat 4 tomatoes to have the same values into your body as you needed 50 years ago. And maybe I'm mistaken a little bit in the numbers, but that's the equation, roughly. And when you see that, people overeating, people wasting so much, it all accumulates to a culture, to a toxic culture that's killing the planet.
Man, so there's a couple y'all hit some. That was like a barrage. That was like an artillery barrage of thought. It's like, whoa, wow, yeah, okay. Someone else like, huh? I gotta look into that later, or have like a fucking physicist or something explain it to me. I don't know. But man, autism, being bipolar, schizophrenia is a big one. I feel like all those on different occasions throughout my life, man. There's been ups and downs and situations that yanked me over here unexpectedly into a new trajectory that I wasn't feeling. expecting and then having to adjust everything on the fly in my life, right? Through relationships, through moves, through whatever, health issues, yada yada. And so at some point, man, I gotta admit, like I felt schizophrenic and whatever that means. Like if it's like happy one minute and then like rah, 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 like you're a different person the next. I don't know. Yeah, man, working through a lot of stuff, and sometimes things outside trigger thoughts that are going on inside, and it breaks that I'm trying to be normal fucking mask, and it just delves into, does this motherfucker have Tourette's? As I storm off and fucking break the conversation of whatever the fuck was going on, right? And then autism, shit, dude, who isn't? You said, what is neuronormative? What the fuck is that? What is that in this situation that we're in right now? Please explain that to me, somebody. What it means to be normal in this, and why that isn't a fucking problem, man. But please, I'm having a lot of issues with understanding that. So this, what you were saying makes sense to me, Robert. It resonates with me, Nachum, but I don't hold a medical degree. I didn't go through psychiatry school. I didn't go to learn how to be a psychologist or whatever. I just, from my own, like what I feel, what I've seen, right? I just, oh, well, that feels like it's on the right track, right? And the other stuff just progressively feels like we're getting closer to a fucking cliff, yeah?
Close to a cliff, or we're already sliding?
Because I'm free.
I think we're already sliding, but we have the ability to stop the slide. Maybe we can even climb back.
Fuck that. Pull the reserve. I think you jumped out of planes a couple times, right? Like what happens when you're
No, I'm one of the few
Are you a landlubber?
fighters in the paratroopers that chose not to jump and had the ability to do it. Because when my team jumped, my team done the course, the parachuting, I was after surgery in the knee because of my physical injury. So I couldn't be in the same time. And later on, when they offered me time after time after time, go do the course, I said, no, that's okay. I don't need it. I was on the ground when I saw the parachuting accident on my team course, and I saw the two people collide and need to cut it and open in the last second and just breaking the entire lower part of the body, but still surviving. Why should I jump in this old-fashioned way? If it was free diving, which is much safer with no so much
You guys
equipment.
have wings? Do you have wings that you put on?
No, I refused to put it because I didn't do the course.
Good man. All right.
They
good
wanted
man.
me to put it, but I said, but I didn't got it. Why should I put it?
Good guy. Good guy. All right. I was gonna say, man, like we're gonna get a lot of shit right now. No, whoever watches this, especially from the United States, is like waiting and they're listening and they're fucking wanting to hear on whether or not you had the audacity to put that shit on your chest. Good man. I wasn't airborne, right? I didn't jump out of fucking planes, but when our platoon from Germany got tasked out, it was to an airborne brigade. And so my combat patch is an airborne combat patch. And I don't have any fucking wings. And as soon as anybody asks me, I let them know right away that I fucking love terra firma. I love it. I am the guy who does not like to be up there, especially jumping out from once I'm up there. No.
Yeah.
Bring me down nicely with wind in my face and a nice refreshing drink on my lap, please.
Yeah.
That's what I want. That's how I prefer to fly. But the fucking fly boys, they know that. Have you guys ever done a barrel roll? A combat landing in the theater? Do you know what that is?
I'm not sure.
It's basically fucking skydiving in a C-130 or some shit. All
No,
right.
we done how you called Hercules?
Yeah. All right, so check it out. So when you go into a hot LZ landing zone, right? Whether it be a big airport or whatever the fuck, you've got a strip out in the middle of nowhere. If you're expecting some type of shit on the ground, regardless of what it could be, the bigger the city, the bigger the risk, the more likelihood of them having something that could really fuck you up. Yeah. So what you do in order to mitigate your risk, right? You don't come in on this long ass approach where everybody's got a shot at you who wants to, right? Oh, fuck it. The Iraqi soccer team just lost. There's a fucking C-130. I think I'll take it out on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they'll come in. Here's the fucking airport, the landing zone, and that big ass C-130 will be way up there. And you're like,
So
oh,
he'll dive.
they dive. And then the fucking people, especially if it's your first trip or if you're coming in the country for the first time, those people on the plane won't warn you. And I had to bite my tongue to be careful
So
on
the
how I
smart people sit in the back, so if
see them
anyone
all of a
pees,
sudden.
won't lean on
Yeah,
them.
you'll see them just look at you and look at everybody, and all of a sudden they'll be just quietly fucking making themselves comfortable. And all of a sudden they have their 4-point harness on, and they're just like, yeah, click. And then they just fucking whatever the fuck, yeah. And then meanwhile you're here, you got your like little strap on, everybody's talking, everybody's blowing with smoke, whatever the fuck, and all of a sudden, oh shit. And the plane just goes, "Wah." You're like, we're fucking dead. And the fucking flyboys grin is just like this as they stare at you like fucking assholes. What do you think of the Air Force now? And every one of us getting off the plane like, fucking help me, Jesus. But the second time you do it, you're with the flyboys. So as soon as you fucking see them going on and you've already been initiated, you don't tell anybody either. So you just back up and you watch the flyboy and you're fucking doing all this shit, yeah? And you tighten your seatbelt, right? And you just watch for them, for that little fucking brace they do or whatever from the headset that they get. And then you know, it's like, yeah? And you just watch everybody around you lose their shit.
How many people pee?
Peeing, throwing up. Oh, help me, Father! For not like this. Fucking like. I have to admit, I was one of them. I was probably like 3 shades of green. Not my uniform, right? Because it was tan. My face. When I walked off that bird, just looking and shaking my head at that guy, the crew chief or whatever it was.
So we didn't have that.
Yeah. Well, you guys just like show up.
I was fighting 30 minutes from where I live.
Yeah, you just show up.
It's sad. I'm smiling, but I want to cry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, different flavors, bro. Yeah, you're looking for jackasses like me. Both your sides are looking for assholes like me trying to fly over, looking down. Like, I wonder what's happening down there. Bam! Why are they shooting? What the fuck? Yeah, that's where I don't even know, man. Like fucking in the States, in our inner cities, right, in our urban environments, there's there's all kinds of shit going on, right? You got gang activity, you got just regular fucking like outlaw type shit, people doing whatever, mixed in with a lot of adolescent angst, yeah, throwing drugs, alcohol, hard times, and some fucking guns and stuff, and it, especially late at night, it gets pretty tricky or pretty hairy in certain areas. But again, like what it is that you guys are living through and seeing a snapshot of that, getting a vignette, as it were, for that deployment that I was on downrange, seeing people who were actually living that, yeah, and being a part of it, being in the middle of it. There's sectarian violence and us in the middle and all that other political shit that was going on, and right, international violations and illegal occupations or whatever, right? Like Bush being a war criminal, Cheney being a war criminal, Rumsfeld being a war criminal, and the united body doing nothing about it. Yeah, just looking the other way while we're in Iraq, fucking, and then other people were protesting and whatever. Like, I felt it from that way, but y'all live that shit. Like, that's your daily life. That's gotta be, like, I don't even know, dude. What's up? Like, how do you bear it? What do you guys? Is there even a
We don't.
conversation
Our
about it?
society is breaking apart. We don't. You cannot.
I
Our
guess that was
society
kind
is breaking apart. You know, they opened. Israel is a small country, right? So many doctors and professors of medicine, of our healthcare system, are already actively checking ways to relocate. That's enough to break a country. If 2,000 doctors leave, that's enough. And our government doesn't understand that. No, they are traitors. And our Air Force, a few hundred of the pilots and the airmen saying it's kind of it's not to our values, it's not to our ethics. We cannot serve a country that will go that way. So we lose our Air Force. What, the yeshiva guy will fly the F-35? Hell no, he don't know math. They try not to teach them math and English and all of the important.
So who are the peacemakers there, man? Who are the people trying to make peace in your who are the people trying to find compromise or bring everybody together, right? To hope to understand, like, you guys are you're all in this together, and because you're so small, it's kind of important that you work your way through whatever issues it is that you're facing at the moment, right? You have to expect this. You are a young country. You're not even 100 years old yet officially, right?
We talked about fight-flight mechanism. Well, you have two ways to act and react when you have in nature and in human society. You can act from fear and you can act from love. And unfortunately, most of the actions, thoughts, and words that people use in Israel, Palestine, whatever you want to call it, it's the same people and land, is from fear. And that leads to decay, to break the system, the organism, and to social disease and pain and death. We have in the Arab society, in Israel, it's half of the year and we already been over the entire amount of people got murdered last year. It's double the rate inside the Arab society. That's an indicator. And you have over 31 weeks of protest, active, hard protest, that trying to explain big parts of Israel that we have red lines. We don't have more cheeks to turn. We cannot go back. It's the second independence war of Israel. It's not if there will be a state, it's on how the state will act. And if it won't act according to national standards that are trying to be established, like that males and females are equal, and religion cannot control all of other people that don't choose religion. All kind of small things that are really big. and that Arab people are not worth less than Jewish people. You know how many Jewish people are Arabs? Because they grew up in Arab states. Their entire family grew up for centuries in an Arab state. They're Arabs. They're Jewish Arabs, not Muslim Arabs. There is so many misconceptions and stigmas. Again, we're going back to stigma. Because if I will go, probably more than half of the world, if I will go and will say I was an IDF fighter, I'm a war criminal anyway. Doesn't matter how I act, it doesn't matter. If I'm a Jewish and I'm from Israel, even if I didn't serve in the army, I'm the new breed of Nazi in the world. Some people say that the Zionut is like the German Nazi movement.
So here's a hard
And
one
in
for you,
some ways,
Nachum.
it's sad to say, but in some ways, our civil society reflects processes that been in Germany in the early 90s, 1933, Germany. They elected democratically in the democratic process, but nationalism went strong. This is what we have now, and people try to protest, to say no. This is not what we fought for. This is not the kind of state or society we want to live in. So many of my friends moved their assets from Israel or their businesses or checking options to have freedom of choice, not only to react. How many of them already learn on their flesh that you should be prepared because they've been in the army and they understand that we are in a war that already started inside of us, and we just need the spark. I hope that the spark won't come,
So
and the only spark there will be is communication.
how do you handle that as a husband and a father?
Trying to convince my wife to leave Israel. To be honest, I'm living in this country for almost 40 years, and all of those years I've been in a war consciousness, you can say. All of from my childhood, from my first memories, from the first things I learned about my family is our history and the Holocaust and the prices my family paid for fighting in the Independence War and Yom Kippur and 67 and 82 and whatever, and I paid my own prices. And for 40 years, I don't want my son to live 40 years in the same situation. He's almost 3 years in under this atmosphere and stress. I don't want it for my kid. The world is big. I'm not obligated to put myself into the definition of only Israeli or only Jewish, or I'm much more than that. It's part of who I am, big part. But I prefer to be a living human being before I'm Jewish, before I'm Israeli or German or Russian or whatever, doesn't matter. So this is where I'm standing. And if it was only my decision, probably it will be easier for us to meet in person. But I have to be strong. And as we said, I'm not alone in this family unit that we chose to be part of. And it's not easy to immigrate. It's 1 or 2 generations of really, really hard life. even if you have all the money in the world. But it's still, I prefer the challenge of being an immigrant than being in a constant war zone that if you look on the demographics, if you look on the environmental stress that are part in the region of the Mediterranean, Israel is a triple hotspot. If the statistic of 1.5 Celsius raise in temperature is global, in Israel in the same time it's expected of 3, and we're already hot. So 3 degrees higher is not that support for life, for having good society and agriculture, and so there's so many things in the equation that I've learned and evolved to think of. And yeah, we are a young country and we didn't have our civil war yet. And we don't have the constitution, and we don't have few of the balances needed and the experiences needed that I think few other places in the world might have to support the future of my family and my kid and all of my neighbors, whoever they will be. This is where I'm standing. I had enough of fighting for just a piece of land, especially if the people that control it, making it a place that people are not equal, that there are people that are worth more than others. It doesn't matter the reason. If this is Jewish and Muslim, if this is male and female, if it doesn't matter. If it's left or and right, it doesn't matter. I want less of it. It will be, wherever I'll go, it will be. But it depends how much the system supports it, approve it, or try to help people be less afraid of each other.
Right. Man, that's rough. My heart's with you and your family, man. For real.
Okay.
That's life. We know it.
Yeah, for real, man, for real. And my thoughts are with you also, right, in your situation. And I hope that when you do make a decision, that it is something you are able to implement with haste, right, in a decisive manner. Going back to gardening, though, maybe.
Yeah, but it is like gardening. It is like gardening. It's to learn the ground, to understand which
You've been
plants.
harvesting too much in one field. You got to give this one a little
Yeah.
bit of a rest.
Yeah, if there is a field full of pests, maybe I should give them the field.
For a bit. See what happens. Something else in nature's
Yeah.
cycle, something's going to happen to balance out and take care of that, and then it'll be its own thing, and then it always is. That's what's.
Yeah, maybe I will want to visit again. I don't know.
There's so much negativity and around everywhere, right? Just negative, and not just like people being negative, but just like legit. There's worrisome things, truly scary things that are going on right now, right? That have an impact on us all, regardless of where we're at right now. Overwhelming Batman, sensory overload, fuck. And so, like, for me, man, it has put a emphasis on how important the innocent things are. in this world that are just there and existing and exploring and communicating and sometimes fighting and doing other nasty shit, right? But honestly, right? And to try to be a bystander in that as much as I can, like in the garden, the community gardens and stuff like that, watching the birds, the feeders, being with my puppies and stuff like that. Um, it brings back, like, man, it ain't all dead. Yeah, yeah. Hello, Mr. Smith. I'll got some puppers. Um, it's important to hug onto those things closer and to cherish them and appreciate them and to show them that love now, right? In the moment, while you have them, while they're on their mind, on your mind and stuff like that. And it does make it bearable, whatever that means, right? Call it a distraction, I guess, whatever, or just a refocus, a pivot, leveraging some other force to hopefully balance out and then lead into the other area for a bit, right? We've had enough of the overwhelming negativity and scary stuff and frightening stuff, right? It's like there's a balance somewhere. How long that's going to take, I don't know. But as an individual, personally, to be able to identify it, number one, that it is there, and then day by day to do my best. Don't always do it. I'm not always conscious of it either. Sometimes it just wakes up in go mode. But trying to make it more than the other, right? So that I'm mindful of it. I'm doing my best to be present in the moment with that as a part of it, then sharing that. And then as that happens throughout however long I have or whatever, hopefully that just becomes my normal, right? What I put my focus on, aware of, prepared for, but why is kind of the question. So what we were getting back to, right? Like, I think those of us who have tasted it, those of us who've lived it, breathed it, war, unspeakable violence toward one another, and being in the same situation where people are trying to do that to you, I don't feel like it's worth it personally, right? But how do you guys feel about gardening and shit like that, and then other programs in your community that you've seen where people really are invested into awesome community projects like that?
So for me, like, one of my original mantras, one of the things that I learned early on was that healing begins with purpose. And I didn't understand it when I learned it so much. I took it for face value. Purpose, healing with purpose. Okay, so what does that purpose really mean? Well, it's finding something to be passionate about. It's finding joy again in life. It's finding something to be responsible for outside of yourself. And then, as now a decade into this, a little over a decade into this and learning this, I've begun to learn now that purpose is much more than that, right? Because purpose was always there. The purpose of life was there. The purpose to move forward is always there, right? That's a purpose that always exists, whether you recognize it or not. So it really became that healing begins with the recognition of purpose, and recognizing what are your true values as an individual that will then promote a healing process within you. without relying so much on the external factors of what we constantly rely on. And so then that became purpose for me, right? As a husband and a father, there was purpose there for me to be better, to be more inclusive, to be more responsive to those I chose to be my family. Friends, there was a purpose and an obligation to, one, make friends, finding out that making a friend was important, and and then to share experiences with said friends, to share the bullshit, to share the good shit, to just share. And then finding those external factors again, because once I was able to recognize the internal factors, all of a sudden recognizing the external factor that I had at my disposal became so much easier to me. For me, it became gardening and bowling, right? So putting myself out there, I could easily just garden by myself in my own backyard, right? And learn and experiment on my own. But going up to the farm up in Cleveland with David Hester and learning what his community's doing and the purpose behind why that garden exists puts a new drive and a new energy into what you put forth into that. And then bowling for me was my way of getting back acclimated with my community. It was a way that I could go almost as a one-stop shop, a place that I've grown up in my whole life, but it was a one-stop shop that I could have access to anybody and everybody in my community. And so I started learning. I'm bowling with lawyers and doctors and mechanics and contractors. And next thing you know, I have an entire community conversation going on, doing something what I enjoy doing. And it took finding that internal purpose, right? Recognizing that internal purpose I already had, that then allowed me to accept the external purpose that I needed.
That's strong. That's really strong. And I can really, really identify on my own journey points that correlate really, really tightly with what you're describing. And it's from the point I was able to communicate with myself honestly about the experiences that I was able to reconnect with nature. And through that, when I felt strong enough on my own path, I went outside and tried to build this Borgani initiative that was in my community, the project I was working on. And it was a way to socialize, to acclimate myself into society, as you said, to bring people into the farm, into agriculture, back to the soil, and back to communication and common learning about nature, about the processes, about the circularity, about how it reflects with myself and society and them. And try to provide the tools I pointed as useful for me or others, for them to explore, to be aware of, to know, to try maybe. And the purpose, I have to say, have to connect, in my perspective, also to self-worthy, to reclaim our feeling that we have worth, we have what to contribute, we have not only the purpose, but also the meaning for ourselves, to be able not only to be alive, but also to thrive and to communicate and to be engaged with our environment, to come back to life, because life is movement and communication. So stop being a zombie in a way, and claim our life by being honest with ourselves. It starts with being honest with ourselves. And that's hard to do. That's hard to do.
That, you guys, yeah, man, on point. You mentioned your mantra and purpose, right? Mantra and purpose. And hearing those two things, I immediately, in my own experience, reflected on. And a session that I was in, and it was just me and two other older women. And like, it was for a bigger class, but we were the only ones that showed up. It was like a free yoga session or just like a meditation session. Yeah. And so we did our meditations and the bells and all that stuff, or the gongs, whatever it was. Yeah. Zoned out for I don't know how long. Whenever I do this, like, was I out for a day? Was it 20 minutes? Okay. Thanks for letting me know. And then I come back to it, like, what do we do now? And so the next step was just sitting next to each other, right? And then I was facing the lead instructor, and there was another individual here. And it was a simple mantra. And it just, she asked me, and I was to repeat to her a simple question, right? What is love? And when I tried to respond by asking her, I realized that I didn't know. Like, I'm trying to ask her, and that question just rocked me so much because I wasn't expecting it. And I was like, oh. And then she kept asking me, and then all these thoughts kept coming up in my head. And then just after a while, like, I wasn't able to respond. And I just sat there and just kind of like, right? I realized, like, I don't know. And wow, to have that realization in front of other people, kind of like right now, it's like, and still working on it. So after that experience, then I asked myself that a lot. I meditated on that shit. Like, man, I don't know. See, you know what I mean? Fuck. Good question. And so after a period of time, I don't exactly remember how long it took, but I come up with just this thing that I wrote down on a board that I come across every day. And I wrote down just a number of things. I don't recall it all right now, but basically it was like, I don't need anybody's permission to take a walk. Right? I don't need anybody's permission to play with my dog. I don't owe anybody an explanation for how it is that I spend my time. And it is all right for me to be in my garden. It is all right for me to sit there. Right? I am giving myself to engage in the activity that makes me feel better. And so then I had to realize that I had to love myself, right? Which is hard. And it's not something that anybody really lets you know about. And maybe if they did, I just wasn't in a state of mind where I could hear them. which then brings out more feelings, right? Because some of these people aren't here anymore. And to come to this realization then after the fact hit different. And I've been told that being vulnerable is a good thing. So we're just rolling with that right now. I realize we're being recorded, and I wasn't anticipating this, but it is what it is. So yeah, man, the mantra of, for me, what is love? And then the purpose of identifying that for myself, and then to give myself permission to engage, which I still struggle with, right? The world around me and the people in it in a healthy way on my terms. And I don't have to accept that everything has to be hostile. I don't have to accept that everything has to be urgent because somebody else throws that my way and they feel it. I'm allowed to let them feel their shit without it being my shit. And so for me, man, that was a fucking game changer. And that was recent, man. We're not talking about all this fucking sage wisdom from I've been doing all this work, all this. Nah, dude, this is like right before fucking COVID, during the like beginning of the COVID, that time frame. You know what I mean? So I've been in therapy a long time, since 2005, basically straight working with head shrinkers and therapists and stuff like that on my issues and learning how to communicate, learning how to trust. Again, I've been in therapy since for almost 20 years, and we're talking almost a couple years ago that I just had that breakthrough. That's a lot of fucking work, dude. It doesn't happen overnight. And unfortunately, I feel like the way our culture is set up and our society is established, it's like, hey, where's your fucking result? Like, hey, fucker, why didn't you fucking, I reset your shit, I put new fuses on, what the fuck? Where are
Where
you
is the
at?
process?
There is no magic pill. Bringing us back to that. Like that, this is all work without cannabis. I'm not even talking, like all that stuff has nothing to do with cannabis. If you want to ascribe cannabis to that, it's that I use it on a regular basis as part of my medical regimen. And so then if I had to, right, if I was in a debate and somebody asked me, you prove to us, people who aren't you, right, why you have what you have in your medicine cabinet, and then why you say it works. You prove to us that right now on the fly. Here's a fucking microphone, bitch. I would have to say that it allows me to show up for experiences like that. If you want to be a dick about it, I would say that it allows me to sleep if you want to get in my fucking business.
Right.
And then I would say that it serves as a mood stabilizer for me to engage with pricks like you, whoever the fuck's asking that kind of question. So next motherfucking question, next song. So we've heard that one for decades now, and it's nobody else's business. And that goes back to the strength, the personal fortitude that I tapped into when those beautiful women asked me that simple question, which caused me to then go home. I went right home and I fucking sat there and like, wow.
So I think that's big, and I think it's something that's not talked about enough, right? So coming from the warfighter mentality, what war and hate go hand in hand, right? So they have to go hand in hand in order for you or anybody else to make it out the other side. There has to be that some form of barrier that exists that blocks out all love compassion, understanding of the other human being on the other end of what you're creating, right? And so for me, I've struggled with that very question of what is love? Do I understand love? I My wife and I have had this conversation about just the simple question, do you love me? And it's really easy to say, yes, of course I love you. But I have chosen now, until I understand it, that I would say yes, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what love is. I think this is love. I think I am starting to understand this love component, this capacity for it. But do I really understand it yet? I don't think I'm there. I don't think me as an individual have been able to get past all of the hate, like you said, the fear of it all, to where I have found that real love. I know that there's passion, but is passion love? That's a whole nother component there that needs to be discussed, I think, too, when we start moving into these types of conversations of understanding that barrier of emotion that is set up, especially from a warfighter mentality to a civil society mentality. And so by having these types of conversations, I think is going to really help maybe bring somebody else into the fold that has a better understanding of what we're talking about, so that we can understand and learn. Just like I'll use CBT therapy, for instance. That was one of the original ones I went through with the VA. And my big takeaway from that was just understanding why my body was reacting with this emotion when I was feeling this. Like, just understanding that was able for me then to pull the pieces that we're talking about, this long extended process of learning on how do I manage that process with external supplements, and that external supplements being friends, family, and other experiences. So, I mean, good on you for bringing that up. And, just having that experience in general, I think is really important in a whole healing process. Well, not just for us, but everybody.
Exactly, dude. And this is like, I legit now feel like I'm in one of the vet center groups. And these are the kind of conversations that come up. And there's just raw feeling in that shit, man. Like, you have people who come who've been dealing with shit, right? And I think each of us, like, I didn't just say, oh, well, I want to bring up that one moment that made me feel really vulnerable and made me cry, right? And then made me cry again now. And I'm being recorded this time. It was a part of a series of a conversation that was brought about through the discussion based off on our experience, what it is that we see, right, and what we're feeling, and then doing our best to try to communicate that to one another. And from my experience here in this group now, this discussion, just feeling a lot of symmetry and a lot of similarities and a lot of parallels in our journeys, our discussions, our experiences, and then what it is that we have done, or at least attempted to do, and are still trying to look into, right? Because this is an evolving process that unfortunately isn't done until you're dead. I don't care about what anybody fucking comes and talks about, we cured this or whatever. You ask them, right, these snake oil salesmen, what exactly they cured. You ask them if they're talking about, right, multiple experiences that an individual faces over the period of their life, or if they're talking about an individual's experience with just one instance where they had a traumatic experience. And these drugs like ecstasy ketamine, etc., right, are being used in a therapeutic setting, which is good. Do that. Keep doing that. Build upon that. That therapeutic, that needs to be there, right? These street shaman are sketchy. Stay the fuck away from that, please. That's scary. Get you into some weird shit. But these substances have value, and to use them to address specific issues and recall specific individual events, to sit with some therapists and go over that specific instance, yeah. But when we're talking about people who have survived genocide, when we're talking about people who have lived in apartheid, when we're talking about people who have lived in a state of war their entire lives, that's all they've known. And that's all their parents have known. That's all their grandparents have known. Now you're talking about genetic coding. Now you're talking about other things that are beyond just your ability to, fixed it with your fancy approach that has been used forever. Again, we want to go back and get into native practices, indigenous practices, folklore, right? Folk medicine, as they like to call it. There's a lot there. Thousands of years of practices there. Just because just because these people come up now with their PR machines and with their new technology to get into everybody's home through television and the radio and your telephone, your cell phone, right? Who has a fucking telephone these days? It's in your face, but it's no different from the people who were showing up at the Senate back in Greece with their manuscripts and stuff that they've prepared with their team of people that have been in their house for however long, right? But man, what a fucking conversation, dude, for just a random smoke session too. Wow.
I have to apologize. I need to wrap it for today. I want to say thank you for this conversation. It was, like you said, unscheduled. And I think that if I can relate to what you shared with us and cultivated with us, I think that I witnessed some of this process that you are doing as a result of this, what you just told us, what is love. And every time you'll send in a little clip or a picture of what you're actually doing to love yourself in the environment you live in, and your doggies, and your walks, and your writing, and your advocacy, all of that together is, and I will attach it to the IVLC, that's leadership for me. And I want to say thank you. And I'm happy we are together having those honest discussions, conversations, because it helps me to reflect a lot about for little pieces and big pieces of myself, of my journey. Every time one of you opens up, it helps me to open my doors.
Dude, everything that you just said about me, right? Thank you. I receive it, right? It makes me feel warm and fuzzy. But right back at you, dude. And not to get into like a sobby moment, right? I think we've already had like, it's like, oh my God, fuck, what are they doing? But for real, man, like I think what do they say? Friends are the family that you pick. And so just by coming across each other, I think it organically happened over the last year and a half, whatever it's been, that now there is a level of trust there. There's been communication. we've built off of our shared knowledge, and now it's sharing that publicly, having these conversations publicly recorded, right? But the feeling is absolutely mutual, right? And what it is that you've been doing in your area, and Kowalski with his farm work over there, right? And we work with a bunch of amazing people who are doing really awesome things in their own little areas, right? All over the place. And we don't get to talk to them all the time. We don't even get to work with them all the time. But when we do see them and when we do get to engage with them, whether it is work or whatever, right? It's reinforcing. And for me, it's something that has become a highlight, right? Jumping on phone calls like this. Yeah, I got time. What's up? What do you guys want to talk about? So go do your thing, dude. And I look forward to the next random session. Kowalski?
Yeah,
Yeah.
likewise for sure. Like give your family a hug, and even your extended family. You guys definitely have my all warm and fuzzies, and hoping that you're all are staying safe in the dilemma that you're living through right now. Like, I think Rico nailed it right on the head. Family's the friends that you choose. And this was a choice for all of us to come here, to get vulnerable, to get real, to extend what is really happening, what is really being felt in real time. Just goes to show how much that we all have put into this, and recognizing that enough's enough, that these real hard conversations need to start happening publicly, where people can find them, can listen to them, can learn from them, and not just learn from what we're saying and taking it as it's going to work for them, but just being able to listen, to feel that somebody else is going through it, and then taking the initiative potentially to learn what works for them. And so that is, like you say, Nachum, all the time, choosing life. This is us fighting for life right now. And it's not just us fighting for our life, but it's us fighting for our community's lives, in sharing our real experiences, in sharing our real thoughts, and sharing our real emotions, to this very real problem of, potentially we're on the cusp right now of losing humanity, if we're being real with the situation on the ground. And it's important that those that recognize it point it out, let people know it's coming, and also letting people know that, hey, we're all in their corner, like Mr. Smith is saying. They out, put a smile on your face. Let's get together, let's come together, and let's move forward.
You felt I'm getting emotional from you two. So
Well, good. Much love, brother. Go enjoy your family.
Later, dude. Bye,
Later,
Mr.
brother.
Smith. I got some pumpers.